Good morning, everybody. I am so happy to give you warm welcome to all the delegates as well as participants to this national level 1 week workshop. As a principal of this college, I have been long desired to conduct a workshop with the support of staff to enrich the academic excellence of our institution. So that we have invited an excellent resource persons from various subjects. They are also more enthusiastic to share their knowledge. At the same time, I would like to emphasize on this importance of workshop by choosing this general topic, research methodology and its strategies. I think it is most essential to know more about this topic, especially for those who undergo with research studies. I hope that this workshop will be more successful with your curious presence. Thank you, one and all.
Respected Principal of Government First Grade College Chandrayapatna, the IQSC Coordinator and the Organizing Secretary, teaching and non-teaching staff of GFGC Chandrayapatna, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on organizing this wonderful workshop. You have taken a lot of effort in the midst of this pandemic in organizing this. I appreciate your effort. Such initiatives are welcome in all the government colleges. It goes a long way. I also wholeheartedly welcome all the resource persons who have taken time out of their busy schedule to contribute to this wonderful workshop. And all the participants, I welcome you all. I hope you will make the best of the opportunity provided here in this workshop and go on to conduct wonderful research which will contribute in making the world a better place. I wish you all the very best. Please pursue research passionately, not just for promotions and APA scores, but really the essence of research is fascination. I hope you will imbibe these qualities, and I hope this workshop will help you in learning those aspects. I thank you all once again. I welcome you all, and I would like to thank GFGC First Grade College for providing me the opportunity to inaugurate and to deliver the keynote address in this workshop. Thank you very much.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಸಾಗರ್. ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಪ್ರಥಮ ದರ್ಜೆ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಚಂದ್ರಾಯಪಟ್ಟಣ ಅವರು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡಾಲಜಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಟಜೀಸ್ ಅನ್ನುವ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು 1 ವೀಕ್ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಶಾಪ್ ಅನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಲೋಕೇಶ್ ಎಂಎನ್, ಐಕ್ಯುಎಸ್ಸಿ ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಟರ್ ಆಗಿರುವ ಶ್ರೀ ನಾಗರಾಜು ಬಿಜಿ ಹಾಗೂ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸಿಂಗ್ ಸೆಕ್ರೆಟರಿ ಆಗಿರುವ ಅಜಯ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಕೆಎನ್ ಇವರಿಗೆ ಹಾಗೂ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಬೋಧಕ ಮತ್ತು ಬೋಧಕೇತರ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಯವರಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆಗಳು. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶಾಂತಾ ಹಾಗೂ ಅಜಯ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಬಿಜಿ ಅವರು ನನಗೆ ಕರೆ ಮಾಡಿ, ಸರ್ ನೀವು ಕೀನೋಟ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ ಆಗಿ ಬರಬೇಕು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದಾಗ ನಾನು ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷದಿಂದ ಒಪ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಶಾಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳು ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಯಾಕಪ್ಪ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ರೈತರ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಹಾಗೂ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಗ್ರಾಮಾಂತರ ಪ್ರದೇಶದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಶಾಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತಾರೆ. ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಶಾಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೋಜರ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೋ, ಎಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರಾಮುಖ್ಯತೆ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೋ, ಅಷ್ಟೇ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜ ಮುಂದುವರಿಯೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಅನ್ನುವುದು ನನ್ನ ನಂಬಿಕೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡಾಲಜಿ, ಫಿಲಾಸಫಿ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಅಂಡ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಲಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡಾಲಜಿ ಹಾಗೂ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಬಹಳ ಜನ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡಾಲಜಿ ಹಾಗೂ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ನ ಒಂದೇ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಇವತ್ತು ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಫಿಲಾಸಫಿ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಇವತ್ತು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಫಿಲಾಸಫಿ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್, ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡಾಲಜಿ ಅಂಡ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ಸ್. Philosophy of research, research methodology and research methods. What is research? Have you ever wondered? Have you ever thought about it? Not to write in exams, just thought about it, just pondered about what research actually is. The very origin of the word research comes from Middle and Old French words, which in English mean seek out or search closely. Part of it also comes from Latin, which in English means go about, to wander, traverse, to wander hither and thither. I think these words sum up the essence of what research actually is: to seek out, to search closely, to explore, to wander, to traverse. As I said in the introduction, research is really exciting and fascinating. And one who pursues research with this enthusiasm will certainly go a long way. There are some things which are subtle yet vital for a researcher. How did children learn their first language? For many years, we believed children learn their first language just by exposure to the environment, by listening to their parents, and that's the kind of answers you get when you ask anyone, how did you learn your first language? They say, by listening to parents, by being exposed to the particular language, by observation, by body language. They say I get all these kinds of answers in the workshop. However, people who are exposed to linguistics have very different insights about it. The way we think we learned our first language may not actually be the way we actually learned it. How does linguistics help us understand these aspects? Professor Noam Chomsky did a groundbreaking research in this area. His publishing of Syntactic Structures, the first book which he published, revolutionized the field of linguistics. That's why he's called the father of modern linguistics. He transformed it from behaviorist to cognitivist. We call it cognitive revolution. What Chomsky basically said was, human beings don't just learn language by being exposed to it. He introduced a term called poverty of stimulus, which basically means the environment doesn't have enough stimulus, to trigger the elements of language in your brain. So he said human beings have genetically predetermined abilities to acquire elementary linguistic principles, which is quite a mouthful. Basically what it means is human brain is hardwired to learn first language. If that hardwiring was missing, no matter how much exposure you provided them with, they would not learn the language the way we humans do. So see, think about it. What people thought about how they learned language and how they actually learned it. Many people will say they learned by exposure, but the way their brain works, they may not be aware of it. These are simple examples that we should remember. I'll give you another example. Take sporting event. What different kinds of research we can pursue on it and how different research questions can be asked. Imagine a sporting event has recently taken place. What actually happened at that event? This question is a completely different kind of research. Then, when you ask, did that event actually happen? And the other question, what do people think happened? What do people think happened in that event? Is very different than the two other questions above. Similarities and differences in what people think happened at that sporting event, that's a different kind of research. What do people say happened and why do they say so is also a different kind of research. That's why I've colored it differently. What people say and what they think is also a different kind of research. For that I've given you an example right in the beginning of linguistics. What people say and what they think is also different. Many a times you may think a lot of things, but when it comes to saying it, you may say it in a very sugar-coated manner. So what people say and what people think are also different. All these questions denote a different kind of research. We should remember that. It's extremely important. It's very subtle, but it's extremely important. It starts with axiology. What is axiology? Axiology is theory of value. It deals with what value is, what values are involved when you're pursuing a particular research. Is it possible for a researcher not to have any values? Can a researcher be completely unbiased? Can a research be completely unbiased? All these kinds of questions can be raised when it comes to axiology. The next is ontology. Ontology discusses what exists. These are different department which studies
different aspects like ontology studies what really exists, what is out there, how do you know it exists, what evidence do you have, how do you argue for it, how do you present an argument. Then we have epistemology. The word episteme means knowledge and ology is study of it. Epistemology studies the nature of knowledge. What does it mean to know something? How can you say somebody knows something? Okay, when you say, I know this, what does it mean to know? Epistemology studies these aspects. After axiology, ontology, and epistemology comes methodology, research methodology. Research methodology is very different from research methods. Although people use it as synonyms, they are quite different. Methodology is the study of methods. I'll explain it in detail. And methods, finally the methods are tools used for research to collect data, to generate data. So methodology is study of methods, and methods are tools to generate and to collect data. This is another way of explaining it. If you look at this diagram, it starts with axiology, which asks, what do we actually value? And it goes on to ontology, where you think about what's out there to know. Can you know something? What's out there to know? What exists out there? Does it exist? These kinds of questions. And how do you know it exists? Epistemology deals with what and how can we know about it? How can we go about knowing about it? How can you say you know something? These kinds of questions are raised in epistemology. And methodology, how can we go about acquiring that knowledge? What methodology will help us acquire that particular knowledge? And finally, methods, where what precise steps, procedures, tools to generate and analyze data. Appropriate tools have to be employed if you expect proper data. Okay? Next, we move on to sources. What appropriate sources? What are the authentic sources where we can collect data? This is extremely important. You can't go to Wikipedia and collect data. You have to find authentic sources where you can collect data, such as peer-reviewed academic journals, published books with ISBN numbers. These kinds of academic texts ought to be used to collect data, and it ought to be appropriate. If you want to collect data via interviews, then you have to design your questionnaire in a proper manner using random selections and all these aspects. All these procedures ought to be systematically followed if you want to generate, acceptable data. Okay, because when questioned in Viva, your data should hold water. Okay. Axiology is a branch of practical philosophy which deals with value theory, also moral philosophy. It is considered with discussing what is good. You know, when I initially went to the University of Edinburgh to study my MSc in education, I had never heard about moral philosophy. I didn't know that there was a department called moral philosophy. I wrote a research paper for my module, and I had used the word good. My professor underlined the word good and asked the question, what is good? I was flabbergasted. I was petrified. I went back home and looked up what is good, and then a host of research came about. Then I realized there are departments called axiology, moral philosophy, theory of value, which actually studies what is good. Okay, when we use the word good, people say, what is good? Okay, so axiology deals with something like what makes a good researcher. How can we say he or she is a good researcher? What is good? You know, what is worthwhile to study? Okay, what is worthwhile? Okay, in which context is the research situated? What are the philosophical values chosen and why? Why did you choose this particular philosophical value as opposed to that? These are the kinds of questions axiology deals with. What is a specific inquiry chosen? Why is a specific inquiry chosen? Axiology asks such questions which helps us think. You know, I always say that mind is like a parachute. It doesn't function unless it opens. So when we raise questions like, Why is a specific inquiry chosen? Why this and not that? Then we think about it in detail and develop a strong foothold, strong foundation for our research. Which claims are made? Why do you make this claim as opposed to that? What we value? Why we value this as opposed to something else? Okay, for example, what Indians value may be very different than what an American values. Or for example, what a citizen of the world values, who thinks borders shouldn't exist, what they value. Why do they value that? These things are different, and axiology tries to study these aspects.
Now we enter the world of ontology. Ontology raises quirky as well as spooky questions, such as, how do we know something exists? How do I know I exist? Or any other things for that matter. Whatever things we claim to exist, how can we justify it? What evidence do we have for it? How do you present an argument for things that you claim to exist? These are the kinds of questions ontology deals with. Many of the classical philosophical problems are actually problems in ontology. So it's quite major.
A famous philosopher called René Descartes got this question, how do I know I exist? He locked himself up in the room, staring at his ceiling. And in the end, his answer was, I think, therefore I am. It's because I'm thinking that I exist. There are millions of answers for how do I know I exist. Everybody comes at it from different perspectives, okay? But in order to pursue a research, you need to have an axiological position, an ontological position, an epistemological position, so on and so forth. So ontology, many philosophical problems deal with ontology. The problem of existence of universal. Are there universals? Do you believe there are universals? Are there any universal truths out there? Do you think language is universal? For example, Chomsky has introduced something called UG, universal grammar. Do you agree? Do you think universal grammar exists? Do you think anything is universal? Or do you think everything is subjective, nothing is universal? What about for every action has an equal and opposite reaction? Is it universal? Or is it also subjective? These kinds of questions ontology deals with. Does God exist? How do you know that he or she exists? How do you know that God exists? What evidence do you have? These kinds of questions. Yes, God does exist. What is the evidence? How do I know God exists? These kinds of questions. What exists out there? Ontology deals with these questions. What about epistemology? As I said before, epistemology is a branch of philosophy which deals with what is knowledge. It deals with nature of knowledge. What does it mean to know something? I'll give an example. If somebody says, I know it is raining outside, but it isn't. That's a very funny sentence. I know it is raining outside, but it isn't. We are perplexed when someone says that. However, if someone says, I thought it was raining, but it isn't. That's fair enough. He thought, maybe what he thought was wrong. He thought it was raining outside, but now it isn't. But if someone says, I know it is raining, but it isn't. How can you know something and then not know it? Isn't it complicated? Isn't it? So these kinds of things epistemology deals with. And somebody will ask you when you're pursuing your research, what is your epistemological stance? Based on what epistemological stance are you pursuing your research? They might ask. So you should know. Gettier, a philosopher named Gettier, said that according to him, knowledge is justified through belief, he said. Because there is question, what is knowledge? What according to you is knowledge? Okay, and you have to defend it by giving arguments. Okay, Gettier said, knowledge is justified through belief. Then a philosopher like me may raise question. What is true? How can you say something is true as opposed to something else? What is belief? How can you justify it? These are the different kinds of questions which epistemology raises. What does it mean to know something? Can we really know something? For example, everything that we know about the world, we know from our sense organs. How do you know your sense organs are telling the truth to you? It's a simple question. But see how deep it is, how complicated it is. There are many things that our naked eye cannot grasp. That's why we use microscope. and we use things like telescope to see things which are far away. Why? It's because our naked eye cannot grasp it. Okay? Are there limits to our knowledge? Are there things which we might never know? Some people say yes. Some people say, look, a rat can never solve a prime number maze. Why? Because they say the rat may not be looking at the problem of prime number maze the way you and I, the way humans are. So the rat may never pursue the problem and solve it, whereas human can solve a prime number maze easily. Similarly, the way rats have scopes and limits, human brain can also have scopes and limits. After all, we are biological organisms. We may have scopes and limits, isn't it? Are you wondering what I'm talking about? Yes, human brain may have scopes and limits. There may be things which may be beyond our scopes and limits, which we may never be able to grasp. Okay? We never know. So that's what epistemology deals with.
So there is an explanation for knowledge, which is knowledge is justified true belief, but it has faced many challenges, as I've mentioned. So you have to identify your own epistemological position, which helps you in your research. Let's move on to the next slide. In this slide, we are going to examine axiological, epistemological, as well as ontological assumptions which usually underlie our research. Any research you take for that matter, they have these philosophical assumptions. Okay? Let's go deal with it one by one. These are just some examples. There are many other assumptions as well, but this is just an illustration.
In universities, what they do is they'll give you a research paper and they'll ask you to identify what ontological assumption the researcher has made, what epistemological assumption the researcher has made, and what axiological assumptions they have made. So it's important for us to just get an idea of what kind of assumptions we make when we pursue our research. These are foundation based on which everything stands. Take on the left hand side, you can see assumptions. To start with, ontological, reality. Quantitative, if you look at it carefully, it says ontological reality, according to that reality, is a single reality. Ontology, according to quantitative, believes in a single reality. Okay, whereas in qualitative, there are multiple realities. There are different versions of realities. Whereas quantitative says there is a single reality. Okay, epistemological assumptions is researcher's role. What role does a researcher play? For example, when it comes to quantitative, a researcher is viewing what's happening at a distance, is viewing at a distance. The researcher is independent. He has no relationship with research, what's going on. Whereas when it comes to qualitative epistemological aspect, the researcher is closely involved, is in interaction with what is going on. Does it have an impact on the research? I think it does, but something for you to think about. Okay? And when it comes to axiological, it's about values and judgment, as I mentioned before. Can a research be objective? Is there something called objective research? Scientists may say yes, sociologists may say no, psychologists may say something else. So everybody has different perspectives on this, which is important for us to remember. Postmodernists might come and say that there is nothing which is value free. Even science is biased. Okay, the research can't be unbiased. Okay, everything is biased, a postmodernist might tell. And depending on what philosophical stance you take, goes on to describe what kind of research you do, And then when it comes to qualitative axiological aspect, they say it's subjective, it's value laden, it's biased. Okay, as I mentioned.
Oh, before we move on to research methods, here is an analogy of an iceberg. I think iceberg is a decent analogy to understand research and its underlying assumptions. Remember the iceberg? It's the same which Titanic hit and sunk. Okay, Titanic, the ship struck an iceberg and it sunk. You remember? It's because only the tip of the iceberg is visible, whereas it goes much deeper. Research is very similar. You can only observe the tip of the iceberg, but all the assumptions which form the foundation of a research lie hidden underneath.
Now we'll come to research methodology. Research methodology is a systematic way of examining the underlying philosophical assumptions. As I told before, in any research, you make a lot of philosophical assumptions, knowingly or unknowingly. If you understand the aspects that I'm talking about today, the fundamental aspects, then knowingly you'll pick and choose the philosophical aspects that you need for your research. It's better than unknowingly. It's like going to a doctor and doctor trying to treat you with medicine without knowing the results, without knowing how it's going to have an impact on you. So it's better to know and knowingly choose a particular philosophical position. It strengthens the foundation of research by questioning researchers' worldviews, values, beliefs, and purposes. Research methodology questions the way you look at the world. What are your values? What are your beliefs? What are your purpose? What's the purpose of your research? And how they creep into your research unknowingly. It questions all that. Okay? It provides a framework. Research methodology provides a framework within which you can play around. It's like a basketball court. If you have a basketball court, then you can play basketball within it. Okay? Research methodology is like a court. Okay? It provides a framework. It provides an understanding of theoretical underpinnings based on which a researcher can go about describing, explaining, and predicting a phenomenon. Okay, as I mentioned it before already, it provides a framework or it provides a theoretical foundation based on which a researcher can go about explaining a phenomenon. It is also described as a study of research methods. Okay, study of research methods. You basically study how to use research methods in research methodology. So there is a difference between research methodology. Research methodology is a framework, and methods I'm going to explain in the next slide. You should think which suits your research, which suits your research, which suits your approach, your particular values and beliefs, what is close to you based on that. What do you passionately like? For example, there is anti-science, there is feminism, there is positivism, post-structuralism, constructivism, Marxism, post-positivism, pragmatism, critical theory, post-colonialism, postmodernism, as well as queer theory. All these are different research methodologies. There are many more. These are just some examples of it. John von Manin has ordered it very differently in 1995 in his research paper. He has ordered it differently. Look what he does. He puts positivism under predict. According to him, positivism predicts things. And according to him, interpretive, naturalistic, constructivist, phenomenological, hermeneutic, symbolic interaction, and microethnography, all these aspects try to understand things. Okay? Positivism predicts, and the rest here understand. And when it comes to emancipate, he says critical theory, neo-Marxist, feminist, race-specific, praxis-oriented, and Freirean and participatory research. These kinds of research methodologies try to emancipate. They try to understand the underlying injustices, the disparities, and they try to emancipate. That's what John von believes. Deconstruction, you can see it has post-structural, postmodernist, post-paradigmatic, and diaspora. John von believes that these research methodologies deconstruct things. So you have prediction, you have understanding, you have emancipating, and you have deconstructing. He has bifurcated it in this order. You may not agree with it, but this is just an example of how things can be bifurcated. By the way, all these are research methodologies. It's up to you. People who usually pursue research in science go for positivism. Okay, and the rest of people in social sciences and humanities do it, but even in education they can use positivism as well. So it depends on your particular research and which research methodology suits you.
And now we can move on to research methods. Research methods are technical and procedural rules employed to generate and analyze data.
Research methods are like tools. They are like rules which are employed
in order to get good data, in order to analyze data and interpret data. There are different tools, techniques. For example, questionnaires, case studies, focus groups, observation, experiments, interviews, surveys, sampling, literature reviews, statistical, non-statistical modeling, so on and so forth. All these aspects are the tools used to generate, analyze, interpret data, and these are methods. Research methodology is a basketball court, and research methods are the tools used to play the game. Which are the tools used to play the game? Like basketball, players, the jersey, board, ring, so on and so forth. Okay? I hope you've been able to grasp the difference between research methodology and research methods. Here is a research onion diagram. Research onion diagram was presented by Sanders in 2007. If you look at it carefully, it is quite self-explanatory. On the outermost layer, you have philosophies like positivism, realism, interpretism, and then pragmatism. And later, you have approaches which are deductive, inductive. There are inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning. Maybe in the next presentation, I'll explain to you in detail regarding those aspects. And then you have different strategies being used. What are the strategies which have been presented in research onion diagram? Experiment, survey, case study, action research, ground theory, ethnography, archival research, etc. And then you have choices. You make different choices. You use mono method, you use a single method, you use mixed method, and you use multi-method. Based on, use different strategies needed. You make choices. And then you have time horizons. Is it cross-sectional? Is it longitudinal? All these aspects you have to take in consideration. And finally, you have techniques and procedures. What techniques and procedures, what are they needed for? To data collection and data analysis.
So this is the research onion diagram presented by Saunders. There are many other diagrams in this manner which you can explore, and you can pick and choose whatever suits your needs and requirements.
If you develop a better understanding of philosophy of research and research methodology, I think your research will have a strong foundation and it might flourish. And you will be easily able to defend your research when questions are raised. I hope I've given you enough food for thought today. I wish you all the very best in your research.
Here you can find the list of references as well as list of further reading. Finally, in this slide, you can find all my contact details.
You can find my email address over here. My Facebook ID is Sagar AH. Instagram, Sagar Earthling. YouTube, Sagar Earthling as well. And Twitter, Sagar Earthling. I hope you liked my presentation.
Feel free to get in touch with me if you're planning to invite me for lectures, or if you're planning to arrange an online webinar or a workshop. I'll be very happy to comply.
I hope you all will enjoy and learn a lot in the rest of the workshop. I can see that there are many wonderful speakers coming along. I wish you all the best, and I thank wholeheartedly the Government First Grade College Chandrai Patna for providing me an opportunity to speak to you all.
Thank you very much for watching the video. If you have any doubts, questions, comments and suggestions, don't forget to write them in the comment section below. Thank you very much.